As I said earlier, there is an element of my YouTube involvement right now that it's not, direct. Well, there's a guilty pleasure to it, but I consider it a dangerous sort of thing to indulge in. Of course, if I indulged in all the time, my subscribers would skyrocket. You could see the John Paul Dorn video. Oh, hundreds and hundreds of viewers because I trashed John Paul Dorn. But I don't seek to do that, but neither do I seek to, avoid it. It's not something that I have to be some sort of purist and say, oh, but I'm just totally above it. I don't ignore it. I don't know. I will engage in the culture. I consider it dishonest to not engage forever. Now, I've defended many times, why I might talk to somebody that is being rude or crazy. Why do I engage with that? The fact of the matter is, I also take a wide walk around a lot of things. For example, math fails. Now, I like math fails very much, and I feel a sense of tragedy about what's happened to him. Not because of the descent into madness, but specifically the descent into the use of violent rhetoric. I'm a little off put by the sort of the adoration of pop culture, but even that's fine. And as a descent into madness, I could even support that, especially as an artistic endeavor. But the violent ideas, the constant violent imagery, and disturbed mentality, disturbed on the violent side of things, I don't have an obligation to look the other way, though I have, but today I got a friend request from the Hold-Ons Network, and that sort of pissed me off. And it sort of made the whole cup of things I walk a wide path around bubble over, And I'd had enough with the skeptical, or what the hell is that guy? The suicidal optimist, aka biodegradable man, and his arrogant claims to be some sort of psychological expert, when you could just go to his channel and see what's going on with him. And I have a long thread with him, and finally some third person going, why do you be so sardonic and everything? It just proves his point. No, it doesn't. Look, when I see an exchange like that, I assume there's some history I don't know. Generally, either I decide I don't care, or if I care, I'll go look at the channels. Often after looking at the channels, I decide, well, I don't care. On the other hand, if I want to get involved with the comment, or I decide I do still care, I could be more informed that way. It's very exhausting. It's like, again, John Paul Dorn, and you want to talk about being able to have more subscribers. There's like 500 views or something. That's way over the normal number of views. I far prefer many of my videos that have 60 views to this day to that one. It was not made to entertain. I know if I made nothing but those kinds of videos, people would find it very entertaining. But I'm not here to entertain you, but to entertain and inform myself. But this is creating a certain amount of angst. I have been spending time, getting into the Thunderfoot thing. I went and I watched the rest of that debate. I looked at the comments on the videos that Thunderfoot had put up. It just confirms that, yes, I was right to have my opinion, in the sense that it really is my opinion. I did not just shoot from the hip and get it wrong. I mean, people in there are saying, oh, well, Thunderfoot's debating technique was perfectly legitimate. It's, just asking the same question, the same word is fine. It's a Bill O'Reilly tactic. And, well, huh? Or people saying, oh, you just want to bend over for Islam, you liberal weenie. Yeah, that's what I thought was going on. That's the bigger debate. This is the public debate, Matt Fails wants to say, don't shit on my lawn. Hey, your lawn blocked me a long time ago. This is from the Hold-Ons Network, who sent me a friend request. You want to be my friend. Well, what's that about? So I went and I looked at a couple of the videos. I made a few comments, uh, honest, and I went back also and made a comment, for example, on a video that was some time ago where the guy's all, his description of his video is something to like, you're all gonna die, those that don't believe us. The rest of you I love. Well, you know what? Read Goebbels' diary, and you'll find that, the Nazis were utopians too, and there was going to be dandelions sprouting and unicorns hopping through the field. Just so long as you let them kill everybody that they want to kill first, it was going to be great. And that's the problem with utopianism. Now, I believe in a better future, but an idealized utopian idea, that's dangerous because when you deify something, you demonize at the same time. It doesn't just lead to demonization. The demonization is there, possibly latent, but it's there. Somebody comes along with an honest criticism, or maybe even an ignorant criticism, and suddenly they're a demon. Why? Because they are opposing. How could they oppose this idealized, beautiful thing? They must hate beauty. Okay. And biodegradable man and suicidal optimist, I just got sick of ignoring his comments. A few weeks ago, I happened to notice for the first time his channel with all of these videos. Some of it's funny, actually. The double twit experiment, that was kind of funny. But it totally reveals that his comments about being an expert in psychology and to care about people and he's just trying to help, to be total bullshit, This guy is way off the deep end. It's far more likely that what he knows about therapy was because he was in therapy and, he was one of these kinds of guys that thought he was the therapist. Part of his psychosis was he thought he was the therapist. I'm not making that as a factual accusation. I'm just saying, look at his thing, In an exchange I had with him in which he tried to call my spelling mistake a grammar mistake and say, oh, you hate mistakes so much you won't admit it, so I've taken the tack of, well, admit it was a spelling mistake that I now have admitted, and I also admit I made grammar mistakes. So admit it was spelling, not grammar. Totally unable to do this. Projection. But it's some third party, or who knows, it could be him, but it didn't have his voice, so I doubt it. You're just proving their point when you have such a sardonic response. No, I'm not. When I see an exchange like that, I assume there's a history there. And I either decide that I don't care to find out what it is, or, I click on the names and look at the channels and see what I'm dealing with. Get some more information and make an informed judgment of what I think. I don't really care if somebody isn't going to do that and read that exchange and going, wow, yeah, this guy was really cutting and oh, he looked hurt, just like biodegradable man is saying. If I'm hurt, I'm not very likely to make comments until I figure out what my pain is about, just like I deal with fear that way. I will go encounter that fear, I will provoke that fear and that pain in myself until I understand it. But other people don't understand that because they make those kinds of reactions in the heat of the moment, motivated by their fear. I don't know that you have to learn, or if you do have to, how else you're going to learn. You want to get more informed, get more informed. You don't care, then don't care. But you care, but not enough to get informed. Well, maybe you're on a borderline there where you need to find a different territory to occupy. But if my effect has been that, oh, well, now biodegradable man has another fan and somebody thinks he really is a genius at psychology, well, that's sort of that guy's problem, and I imagine he will pay the price for that eventually, for that kind of thinking. My John Paul Dorn video, well, I've spent a lot of time. It wasn't just I found somebody like the atheists do, find some creationist saying something crazy, and then you get the vent. My venting on John Paul Dorn is after giving him a lot of sincere feedback. And I still give him sincere feedback. And that video was sincere. I didn't call him stupid or your eyes are too close together. Those were the things that I actually complained about. That I actually have a complaint about, that actually are bothering me, that motivated me to make that video. I don't have to, I'm not under an obligation to hold back, hold back, hold back. You know, that I don't have to do that. You know, though I defend, you know, speak of my mind, I actually do take wide paths around these guys sometimes, but, you know, I'm not under an obligation to. And frankly, you know, it feels dishonest partaking in this conversation, speaking my mind as I see it, and letting these reservoirs of unspoken things get too full. Sure, a little bit, because often you can find that, yeah, you have all kinds of ideas. You don't need to say all of them. I have lots of ideas that don't build up to that. But at some point, if your cup runs over and you just let it spill there and you're pretending to take part honestly in the public debate, well, you're not really taking an honest part in it. So, I mean, I have to figure out exactly how and where to limit this. There's a lot of it going on, and, you know, I mean, which is worth commenting, which is worth my time, which will I take the time to do. You know, who knows? Part of that's natural. If I enjoy it less, I will have less time, and the things that are lower priority won't come up. But part of the issue for me is to be able to vent on these things that build up often enough that I can make more videos about positive, affirmative creations and ideas that I would like to discuss. Because what happens with pent-up emotion is eventually that's what has to be expressed. And things that are genuinely more important to you, they will be the things that lose out. They will not get expressed because there's something you just have to get out. So I'm purging myself of that, but on the other hand, you know, I've spent a bunch of time in that Thunderfoot thread and arguing with biodegradable man in the last 24, 48 hours. And though it's also fun. I mean, there's definitely rewards to that. Like, you know, he denies those are the same accounts as Suicidal Optimist and Biodegradable Man. But not to me, and right in the middle of the debate, he switches to his Biodegradable Man account. And at no point could he admit that spelling is not the same as grammar. And yet he's the pedantic one that thinks it matters. I mean, so, yeah, it's a guilty pleasure, the amount of enjoyment I have for that. On the other hand, I don't feel I was wrong. It's more when you fight monsters, watch out because you could become one, as I have said many times before. I don't think there's anything wrong with fighting monsters, and I think if you always avoid doing it, you're just letting people roam free. On the other hand, nobody's really a monster, and so that's where the balance comes from. So anyway, I feel I've expressed myself on this and saved myself 3 or 4 videos on each of these individually because now I don't have any unresolved things to express.